What's up, YouTube? Welcome back. So I wanted to come through and talk about the PJ Washington, Brittany Renner situation, and I know this is a little late, but I still wanted to come through and just give my thoughts and opinions on this situation, and also get your thoughts and opinions on this situation as well. So just to give a quick rundown of this story, just in case you may have forgot, maybe you never heard it, whatever. So a quick rundown. So basically, long story short, um, a lot of people, particularly a lot of people within the black sector of social media, are coming at Brittany Renner because they feel that she, quote unquote, took advantage of PJ Washington because she ended up getting pregnant by him, and thus she, quote unquote, secured her bag by getting pregnant by him. And there's an age difference between them. Brittany at this point in time is about 29 years old. PJ Washington at this point in time is about 23 years old. And people felt like, whoa, she's a predator. Whoa, she took advantage of that young man. That's not right. And I find that to be a little strange that all of a sudden we know we can spot predators. I find that really strange now. All of a sudden we're down for going after predatory folks when it comes to who these people pursue relationships with. Because the last time I checked, R. Kelly was a predator that was out here for years, for decades. And people either ignored it, um, made excuses for it, and there were a few people who even facilitated it, within his circle at least. And honestly, to an extent, if you're making excuses for him and advocating for him, then in a way you're helping to facilitate that as well. So you're kind of a part of that facilitation as well, you know. But when it came to R. Kelly's victims, basically they were fast, and they were old enough to know better and old enough to know what's up, right? Like they old enough to know what's up, what it's about, all right? And those were like, at the time, teenage girls. But, apparently they old enough to know better. They knew that what they were doing, they were being fast. That's something that, you know, particularly actually a lot of black women throw around. Like, oh, she fast, you know. But when it comes to this situation with PJ and Brittany, it's like, well, isn't he old enough to know better? Like, isn't he old enough to know what was up and to know about what Brittany was about? Because Brittany, as far as I heard, she's been pretty straight up about how she gets down, and I believe from what I've heard also that she's written a book about it too, about how she gets down, and she's also posted many videos on social media talking about this, many a video, right? And the overall theme of this video that I'm making is more so centering around black men and accountability. And I feel like within the black community, I do think that sometimes, many times, when black men mess up, when black men fall short, for some reason, we don't want to assign blame and culpability to black men. I mean, not to say that we never do, because we do, but I feel like a lot of times people are more apt to make excuses for black men versus when a black woman or when black women fall short. and mess up. You know, the excuses aren't there as much when it's black women for some reason. And also, like, shouldn't like the brotherhood, the black male brotherhood, shouldn't they have warned PJ and hipped him to the game? He probably is, a bit, green, a bit fresh when it comes to like, the whole fame thing and being an athlete and things like that. Granted, there's not a manual for that type of a thing. But shouldn't the people within his circle, the black men at least, like hip him to the game and, let him know what was up? Maybe they did. We don't know. Maybe they did and he just ignored it. Because sometimes people know what's up. Are like people like they know what's up, but they think that, oh, that don't apply to me, or it ain't gonna happen to me, right? I'm different. Oh, I'm the exception to the rule, right? Just like, Summer Walker thought she was different and the exception to the rule. Iggy Azalea, Khloe Kardashian, Sierra. I know y'all like Sierra, but she was one of those too. But, thankfully Sierra was able to bounce back and rebound and, get into a good situation, find herself a good situation and, quote unquote, live happily ever after. Seemingly, at least, right? But, that doesn't happen to everybody who makes mistakes, of course. And Brittany Renner went on DJ Academics. I think that's how you say his name. DJ Academics Show. His podcast. Whatever you want to call it. And basically they just had a conversation. I heard bits and pieces and didn't watch the whole thing. To keep it real. But I noticed during their conversation and discussion with each other, DJ Academics, he mentioned maturity and saying something to the effect of basically Brittany, like men and women mature differently, or mature, like women mature faster than men, right? That's the theme, right? And that basically Brittany took advantage of that, right? And to that, I would say, well, let's go with that for a minute. Let's go with that and say that men and women mature at different times, different rates, whatever. I'm sure you've heard that before throughout your life at one point or another. But the thing is, though, it's like you may not be mature to the fullest extent at the age PJ was at when he got with Brittany Renner. True. We all got to do a lot more maturing, right? There's more maturing to do and learning to do and life lessons and all that good stuff, right? But I think at the age PJ was at, I think he was old enough to understand basic biology, basic human biology. Like, oh, if sperm fertilizes eggs, then conception has occurred and you'll have a kid, right? And apparently, based on what Brittany was saying, I think, they were engaging in intercourse without any sort of contraception. So, Brittany, she want to secure the bag. So she's like, okay, come on, and I guess he wants a good time, right? But if you're not old enough to understand the basics of human biology, as well old enough to deal with the consequences of those actions, then you're not old enough to be engaging in those actions. Whether it's the intercourse or either just the romantic relationship. You're not old enough to do that if you're not mature enough to understand those concepts. Physically, I'm sure they're mature enough physically, right? And as well, he is above the age of consent at that point, but I'm talking more so mentally, right? And also, I feel like sometimes, like, even if the Brotherhood did warn PJ, he, again, as I mentioned before, he may not have just listened. It may not have been anything that he was really concerned about. I mean, we got Future out here still having kids. Like, he's on his like ninth or 10th kid at this point. I lost count, but he's complaining about getting got for child support and about these women wanting to get with him for a come up, right? And I'm like, well, when did you figure that out? Please don't tell me you figured that out at the 8th child. You should have been figured that out, right? But when it comes to a Future type, you know, folks would just let that pass, let that go, you know. And if women were to get with a Future type, we wouldn't be sympathetic to the woman if she got caught up, right? If like Lori Harvey got caught up with Future, there would have not been any sort of sympathy or empathy. Not a lot, not real, not much, right? And it would have been on the basis of, hey, you know what Future is about. You see him all over here. You know what he do. You know how he get down. And I would agree with that, you know. Yeah. But when it's the other way around, and say the gender of a person like Future is female, right? It's different, right? It's like, whoa, you shouldn't do that. That's not the way you're supposed to get down and behave. Whoa, you're a predator. And do I think that Brittany probably was, plotting? Probably. Keep it probably. Let's be real. She probably was plotting. Um, but at this point, I think you should have. I think just basic common sense should have just let you know, hey, keep an eye on Brittany. But you also have to remember that Brittany is considered, an exotical preference too, which, you know, plays a factor in this as well because they don't think that the preference is supposed to behave like this because she is the preference, she is what is preferred, quote unquote. These are quote unquotes here, right? And they don't associate that type of behavior, the gold digging type of behavior with the preferences, even though the preferences be gold digging, the non-preferences, everybody, all across the board, right? Um, so there's something in that as well, right? They're not coming, like people aren't coming out and saying it, but that's a bit of like an undertone to it, a subtle, very subtle undertone, where it was like, oh, you're not supposed to be like this. You're supposed to be innocent, right? You're supposed to be one of the good ones. Even though, even if when the preferences are innocent and one of the good ones, quote unquote, they still get dragged through the mud a lot of the time. So Brittany Renner was just like, bump that, I'm going to get my bag. And she got her bag with PJ. So she locked in there for about 18 years, And I know she hoping that PJ will have a very successful career in the NBA. I'm sure she is. And as well as maybe a bit of a shock because they do probably associate the preferences with being quote unquote innocent. And it's like, oh, you was just using me for a bag? Really, Sean? It like that? Whoa. Right? So that's a part of it too. And also, Brittany Renner, from what I've heard, is a product of, a black man and a white woman, you know, the preferred union when it comes to how the preferences, um, are coming to this world and who raises them and who are part of their lives, right? The preferred, route for the preference, right? You know, I don't see anyone blaming her white mama or her black daddy for this, right? I don't see no one blaming them saying, oh, they should have raised her better to, be more down for the brothers, right? And Brittany, she probably just knows the game. She knows what these dudes like, and it's probably basically women with her phenotype when they get all successful and whatnot. And she still is considered by many to be black because her father is black. So it's like, oh, you can have the quote unquote exotical preference and have the exotical look, but also still be within the community and not be considered a sellout. Because, that's a thing too where some of the dudes, like, they want the exotical look, right? But they also don't want to be seen as like being self-hating or being a sellout. So a Brittany Renner would work good for them. Again, of course, we know there are some dudes who just don't care, whether it's just like they on some self-hate stuff or either they're just on some, love is love. Oh my God, how could you, right? How could I not? Love is love. But the preferences, they ain't that innocent. The preferences are wising up. They they not trying to just, be sideline wives. They're just trying to make sure they secure their bag or their meal ticket or whatnot. But all this being said, though, I'm pretty sure that Brittany Renner, despite all this, I'm sure that she'll end up with another black ball player at one point or another. It may not be basketball, but it'll be some sort of a athlete, though. At one point or another. All right. So I wonder how things will go then. Will folks still be playing the victim card for the next black man she secures the bag from? We shall see. But thanks for watching. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments section. Until the next video, adios and goodbye for now.